Hello, hello. Here we are again on the paranormal world. And we are here on 19 different platforms, 3 TV stations, and a bunch of social media sites. So you can find us just about everywhere. And we are here for some cutting edge conversations and quantum possibilities. My name is Agi and I'm the host. And we have a phenomenal guest from Sweden this time, way east, 9 hours from me here in Tucson. And but before I introduce him, let me first tell you how you can connect with us. You can find us on broadcastteamalpha.com. You can find us on YouTube. And if you hear us on any other platform right now, try to come to YouTube, because that's the only place we are monitoring the chat room, so you can actually participate in the show. You can ask questions and then you can comment, and hopefully good comments. So, so you can just participate as well as we do. And then check out the shows on when you are surfing other platforms. See if you find us there too. And also, if you feel like it, if you like what you hear, support us on the super chat feature. It is just like Christmas Eve when you see something coming in like that. We have also, under the umbrella of the Broadcast Team Alpha Show, we have created a spiritual think tank. And we do amazing things there. We bend the laws of physics, because sometimes we create things, nice things in the physical with us out of seemingly nothing, because we reach into the quantum existence with what we want to happen. We attach the matching vibration and we bring it into the physical. That comes from healings for people that had almost spontaneous. In just a matter of hours, they've gotten rid of major ailments, or creating rain out of basically lightly clouded skies in an hour and a half to save somebody's house from forest fires. So there's a lot of goofy stuff that we do there, but it is real because quantum mechanics explain how it can be done. And also, we have a membership group on YouTube. And in there, we have some special videos. My story is in there, and there's things in that story that I've never talked about on the air. Besides that, we have a lot of stuff going on right now with fake news, and you're being bombarded with all kinds of negative information. And chances are that we need to clean up our subconscious mind a little bit from all that negative stuff that has been allowed to enter. I've created some endless recordings that reaches into your subconscious mind and reprograms it for success, for perfect memory, for perfect health, and other things. And I'm getting the emails, and people are having really good results with this. So that's something that you should check out. Bad habits can be gone, and especially healings. People are getting healings from running this stuff at night while you sleep, because when you sleep, your brainwave pattern is way down into the alpha range or below, usually below in theta. And it reprograms the mind, because in theta, that's where super learning happens. And when you hear repetition like that from an endless recording, it goes bypasses conscious mind and directly into the subconscious mind and reprograms it. So have a look at that. I think you're going to like it. And I also want to give a shout out to the people at Conscious Awakening Network. They put together a phenomenal platform, and we are allowed to keep our shows on there. And by doing so, we're also on Roku, we're on Amazon TV, and we're on Apple TV through them. So if you're looking for us there, just look for Conscious Awakening Network, and then we are within that platform. So that's going to be a good place. And now I want to talk to you about our guest. He's a Swede. And you know, you don't know, but we know, and that is Norwegians, me and him being a Swede. There's always this bantering going back and forth. We make fun of each other, but we're not going to do that today. This is actually serious. His name is Fred Anderson, and there's two S's in that name. And that's what I got wrong the first time, and that's why he didn't get my emails. He is a researcher. He's an on-air personality. He's a TV producer, author, podcaster, a sought-after guest on radio and podcasts. And his book is called Northern Lights, High Strangeness in Sweden. And there is a lot of strange things in there. When I got to look at the book, and I tell you, Swedes, they have the same thing we have in Norway, and everywhere else around the world. There is little people that live in the woods. They are meeting with extraterrestrials or otherworldly beings. There are UFOs being seen in the sky. And there's many other things he writes about, but it's not special to Sweden. It happens everywhere. And that's why that will be a good book for you to read about what is really going on that has never been talked about. So I want to introduce Fred. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Age. Thank you. Thank you. I'm very, very happy to be here. And I remember I was a little bit surprised when your name showed up and reached out to me as a contact, because I was like, wow, what a fascinating man. Because of course I'm a researcher, so I had to do some research and read, and so I'm honored to be here, and especially since you're from Norway and I'm Swedish, and as you mentioned, there is a brotherhood between our countries, I'd say, definitely, even if we tease each other from time to time.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, research is very good, and researching me, and if you do that, you'll know more about me than I do, because I'm everywhere out there. You write about a lot of interesting things, and one of the things that, because of what I have seen as a pilot, UFOs, and the UFOs usually don't fly by themselves. There is somebody inside. But you write about something in the book also about meeting with otherworldly beings or seeing otherworldly beings. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, in the book Northern Lights, I'm first of all, I feel that this phenomenon, the UFO phenomenon, for me, I'm gonna be honest, Age, I feel it's a mystery, but that's why I'm also doing research into it, because I want to explore it, So in the book, I'm going through a lot of really, really interesting, let's call them humanoid encounters. We have small beings, we have big beings, we have beings that are shaped like boxes, basically. And to my surprise, when I started to research this subject in Sweden, I didn't expect it to be so much of it here. in Sweden, we rarely talk about these things. We talk about ghosts, of course. We have some big lake monster, but never really about these other kind of beings that people see and experience. You know, the question is, of course, what are these beings? What are they aliens? Are they something from another dimension? Are they, you know, for me as a researcher, this is such a deep, profound mystery. Especially, I mean, I've seen a couple of things myself. I don't want to go so far to call them either ghost or alien or something like that, but I've seen it and I've experienced it, and I feel that, yeah, there is something to it, you know, especially if you go far, you know, if you go out on the Swedish countryside, you will hear stories like this everywhere. I don't. Do you want me to mention one of these things I've experienced myself?
Yes.
Yeah, I worked on a paranormal show about ghosts a couple of years ago, and we were standing in the garden, and it was broad daylight. You know, there weren't any shadows or anything like that. And I'm talking with the owner of the house, and we're talking about the shadow people that she sees around the house and in the garden. So I'm standing there, maybe 2 meters, 3 meters behind her. There's a thin tree, very thin tree. And suddenly I see this solid black shadow person. I don't know what to call it, you know, sticking out. You know, you could see the head, some kind of hat, shoulders, everything like that came out. And it was like, honestly, it was the first time I saw something so clearly. You know, I could see something that they had seen, and that meant a lot to me, of course. So, but I mean, they come in all shapes and sizes here. We have the gnomes, of course, which is still a very, very, you know, active things even today in modern Sweden. I mean,
Yeah, and these are probably, I don't think they necessarily are ghosts. They're probably interdimensional beings. And they are, the veil is getting much thinner now. We're able to observe things outside of the physical much easier. So they very likely that was an interdimensional being that entered into your presence, and they may be as surprised, just as surprised as you were. By, wow, I can see those people. You never know, because there are times when they look surprised, and they once you they come into your presence and then they run away, like they didn't expect to.
Yeah, there's. I don't mention that in the book specifically, but we have a lot of encounters with gnomes where the gnome, you know, you have a hunter or someone out walking in the forest, and they're coming, and suddenly they see this short person, this short figure standing there, often gray or with a pointy hat and beard, and there's always this surprised reaction from the entity, from the being. You know, it's like standing and then suddenly, you know, yeah, like you said, total surprise, like it didn't. And I find that so fascinating. You know, they're like you said, they're almost as surprised as we humans.
You know, there is a way that you can see those little guys, and every time you go out, all you have to do is to get your hands on a 4th generation night vision goggles, because that can see higher up into the light spectrum than your eyes can. There are people that is going out into the woods now with a 4th generation night vision goggles on, and they see animals, and they take the goggles off. The animals are not there anymore. Put them on, and there's the animal again. So that's an interdimensional animal. And because these fourth generation were developed for the military. And the US military over in Iraq, they gave out the fourth generation to the soldiers. And they got all kinds of complaints because the soldiers said, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. We see people. And then we take the goggles off and they're not there anymore. So I don't know if that was ghosts properly or if it was interdimensional. Oh, well, I guess ghosts are interdimensional. But still, there's something here that we are not able to see, but it's there. And that's what you're talking about.
Mm. Okay. I really would like to try that, you know. I have a question when, you know, when we're talking here about gnomes, the little people. As you know, from Norway and here in Sweden, this is a very common thing, the little people. It's been with us for a long time and people see them. How is it over in the United States?
Oh, in the mountainous area, especially in the Appalachians on the, you know, on the East Coast, there is a lot of these little people. And I've heard and I've seen, there's pictures of them actually. Not clear, but they're said to be pictures of them. And they're pretty much in the forests. And also around lakes where there's trees around in the summer where it's nice and warm. You also have what we call fairies. And in fact, if you go to broadcastteamalpha.com, go into the picture gallery, I have pictures of actual fairies there. Nori and I put that on there 3-4 years ago because there was a fairy about that long, had wings and a tail and a stinger at the end of the tail. And they were doing a forensic investigation of it. They took x-rays and you can see the bone structure inside. And they start cutting into, because this thing was you know, was dead. So they cut into it and they could see the muscle structure that went along the bone structure inside. So this thing was alive. So they're there.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, absolutely. I had some plan for this summer actually to go out and try to see one, at least one. Here, a good way is, they say, to meet a gnome, especially gnomes or vette, as we say in Sweden, is to make some kind of food offering or a drink offering, like putting out a glass of whiskey for them in the forest and see, and they might show up. We'll see if I do that.
Yeah. Now, I just thought of something. I have not thought about this story for over 50 years, and that is one that my mom told me. We had a fairly sizable forest on my farm that I left back in Norway. And there were one time that she had walked through the forest. It was quite a, quite a couple of mile distance, 3-4 miles on that edge of it. So she was walking back when there was dusk, I think she said. And she was walking through, there's a path through there. So she was walking, and then she starts seeing these small footprints in the light snow. The shoes were about 2 inches long. And they were going ahead of her, so she followed the footprints. And then they took off to the side, and she followed the footprints again, and they went into a hole in about a, I guess I should compare it to a football size hole in a tree, and right at the ground level. And she was saying that she saw the footprints went into that hole. And it kind of alarmed her a little bit. She got a little bit scared, so she just didn't get down and look in there, but she was just went home. Because these little guys, they can be mischievous. And yeah, they can do tricks on you, or maybe more than that, because they want to be left alone. And if we come around, that's their defense. This is, man, I haven't thought about this story since I left Europe. But that was probably one of those short people.
Yeah, it sounds like that. I'm very happy you shared it with me and those who are watching and listening, because I find it very, very fascinating. And this reminds me, I won't go in it so deeply, but my father's grandma, Julia, when she was 20 years old, I think it was she was 20 years old, she went to work at a postmaster in a small village in Sweden, and the postmaster was meant to have sent her a horse and carriage, you know, to get her at the train station, but it didn't arrive, so she didn't know where to go, so she just started walking. After a few minutes, a little person, little people, a gnome, you can say, showed up in front of her on the road and started to wave at her, you know, like she should follow him. So she followed him for a couple of kilometers until he ran into a farm, into a house, and that, of course, was the house where she was supposed to work. And you know, she told this story. The thing is, of course, that the driver, the horse and carriage, came a few minutes later and made his excuses. I'm so sorry, I missed you. And they fell in love, of course. And so my father's part of the family was created that way. And I find it's a cute story, but there's so many stories like this in Sweden and this part of the world, and I like that. It's mysterious, you know.
Yeah. Let me shift topic a little bit. There is a place in Norway called Hessedal, and if you go out at night in that area, you see UFOs flying around just about every night. And are there things like that in Sweden also? Because I know in Norway, NASA even went over there and set up a camera that is motion directed, possibly, because if anything moving in the sky, moving fast in the sky, the camera turns on and it takes a picture of it. What do you see in Sweden? Are there places where there are more activities with UFOs?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, we have an area outside Stockholm called Vallentuna that, at least I'd say up to the 80s, were a big hotspot for UFOs and other things. It actually, I mean, the main big event was in 1974, where a woman and her family basically was chased by a big bright object with beams coming out from the ground into the craft, or what you want to call it. And during that night they had, I don't know, it was 30 or 40 witnesses all around the area who saw it. And and you know, this attracted the attention of the military, and they did a secret operation, Operation S, where they tried to, you know, get closer to the mystery, but they never found any answer to it. Anyway, this whole area, when I did some more research, I found a lot of witness testimonies about similar things, or bright objects, or you know, all kinds of strange flying objects, and that went on, of course. It's also the place, probably one of the few known alleged abductions in Sweden. There's not many of these, but there was actually the same night, or if it was the night before, a man was out walking very near this area where this woman was chased, and saw a bright, strong light coming towards him, hit him to the ground, and he woke up like an hour later in front of his doorstep a few kilometers away. And he claimed to have remembered, with some assistance by hypnosis, that he had been brought up in some kind of some other kind of realm. Basically, he didn't say ship or craft. But it's also a fascinating story. There is photos of the wounds he had after being hit to the ground. Yeah, so that, and I asked around, like a year or two ago in the area, and there were people claiming still to be chased by these bright lights and other objects flying around there. So it's fascinating. Lots of ancient remains, lots of, rune stones and grave mounds, and lots of history. So I'm always wonder, is it connected? I don't know.
Very well could be. And then we have the Baltic Sea UFO.
Yeah.
Yeah. What can you say about that? What do you think it is?
I know the diving team, the explorers, Ocean X, are still, they want to do more further investigations of the locations of the location. I've seen sonar pictures of it, of course, and it looks odd. I mean, it's circular. Some want to compare it to the Millennium Falcon in Star Wars. I'm not so sure about that, but it's obviously a very circular object. Some friends I have say this is just a natural thing. Some say otherwise. I've heard, you probably also heard, that the diving team have interference on their communication when they get near this object. So honestly, I don't know what to think about it yet. I hope they will go down again and do more filming and more, testing, because I'm curious, of course.
It appears as there's some electronic interference around it, because the divers, they have a communication device. And when they got close to the craft, I'm calling it a craft because it looked like one of those to me. They're sitting on the bottom of the Baltic Sea. When they got close to it, the communication device quit. It wouldn't work anymore. So that's kind of like similar to when a UFO flies over you, the engine of your car dies, the radio goes out. It's a similarity here. And I think that's, even though it's been there a long time because there's a lot of silt on it, it would be fun to start digging into it and getting inside of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. This reminds me, when you mention interferences, a couple of years ago, we have a case where a man was driving alone home at night on a dark road somewhere up in the north of Sweden. And he sees this strong green light in the sky above him. And at the same time, his radio, everything in the car, the car doesn't stop, but the electronics in the car, there is disturbance and there's interferences on it. So he stops the car and he actually sees, and I love this because I'm an old school guy, he sees a classic flying saucer, almost like the one people saw in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And he was standing beside the road and he was looking at it. And until he got so scared, he went away. And he actually got damage on his eyes after looking at this light. It wasn't just the interference on the technology in the car. There was some kind of physical he got affected physically by it also. I find it, yeah, I find it very interesting. But honestly, maybe why do electronics get, why does this happen?
Well, it's I'm not sure that's what they use also in when they use jamming devices, and probably the same kind of. I'm not that good on electronics, so I'm not really sure exactly how that technology work, but we know it does work. And now, when you're talking about UFOs, there's something else that comes to mind too, and that is that it seems like there is interference with the people that have these sightings. And in your book, you also talk about men in black.
Yeah, yeah. The Men in Black, I'm endlessly fascinated by it. I must admit, we don't have so many of these observations or encounters in Sweden, but there is a few. One that comes to mind is well, actually, I have a weird story myself, and I don't know if you can count it as a Men in Black story, but it is a little bit creepy. Maybe a year or two ago, I was active, really, writing about Men in Black, trying to find Men in Black encounters in Sweden, and you, as a researcher, as an author, you're very into the subject, so that's the only thing you think about. Anyway, one day I was walking home and I'm passing a man on the street, and this man, I kind of sense that he stops behind me. And I look back and I see that he's standing just watching me. And I was, this is creepy, So I'm continuing, I walk home and I notice that he follows me. And okay, this could of course be a robber or anything like that, but it's not. And he's, he follows me all the way to the house where I live in. And then he starts showing up at the doorstep in the middle of the night or outside the balcony looking up at our home. And he have one question or one word, and that's Luam. I don't know what that is, Luam. That was, of course, so for a while I kind of stayed away from Men in Black encounters because I don't know, is this in my head or is it something else? So there aren't many of them in Sweden, but there's one very, very interesting. We had a contactee person named Ante Jonsson, who passed away a couple of years ago. He had a very, very fascinating, there's a chapter about it in the book. He had a very fascinating encounter in 1984 where he basically got attacked by some kind of small dwarf-like creatures, quite similar to those that Whitley Strieber encounters in his abduction. Yeah, very, very similar. So, but he managed to get away from these. And after that, he began a lifelong contactee session, you can say. They returned to him and they took him with them on journeys all over the universe. So when he passed away, he had left thousands of notes, stuff that is written down from the experiences. So when his family arrived after his passing to get his things, the staff at the retirement home told them that two men in black, with suits, had come and claimed that there were his relatives and took away all this material from them, which gives an extra layer of weirdness to the whole case with Ante. I've heard now that some material have showed up at the police station actually somewhere, but much is still lost, what I understand. But just that someone went there, two men in suits went there and said, "We are his family, we need this stuff." I find that very intriguing. You have, of course, older stories from the 70s and 80s. We had a whole rash of alleged, I call them frogmen in black, because there were mysterious frogmen, I mean divers basically, who showed up near important locations in Sweden and behaved and looked strangely. They had odd faces, odd ways of talking. They seemed, in lack of better words, like otherworldly. They didn't seem like human. They seemed like they were trying to imitate humans, basically. So, you know, the whole Men in Black phenomena fascinates me. And once again, honest, I'm not totally sure what it is actually. If it's, you know, I don't know if you have any opinions on that or experiences, but yeah.
Well, there's all kinds of stories of them here in the US, and they don't seem to be violent, but they have a way to control the other person with their mind, so they agree with them to do whatever they ask for. Though if somebody had the presence of mind enough, they may have been able to block that by there's some mind techniques that sometimes are taught in the martial arts, where you can block somebody else's inquiries. And I think there's a lot of them. There's quite a few of them out there. But I got a good question. After disclosure, will these guys be unemployed?
Well, they might need to look for new careers for sure.
Yeah, they should crawl back in the hole they came from and just hibernation.
That might be the better thing to do.
Yeah, and I am sure that they are probably not human, but maybe artificially created entities, robots, or something that the federal government of the United States, i.e. the CIA, is working with to help suppress this information.
Let me
let
me toss out a hypothesis I have. You know, I'm it's a bit wild, and maybe you probably won't agree with me, but let's say that the phenomenon UFOs and everything is part of something larger, some bigger phenomenon, something maybe more ultra-dimensional, or less physical. Imagine if the phenomenon itself, this force, this power, can take humans and make them their proxies. Do you understand what I mean? So if, let's say you've seen a UFO and suddenly two guys are knocking on your door asking weird questions. Maybe these two guys are in ordinary humans, but the phenomenon itself, this force, this power, have kind of taken possession over them to act as its messenger, basically. I know that sounds wild, but
no, I don't think that is so wild, because right now the technology is there to do that, because half the people on Earth over the last 2 years, they've been taking something in their arm and that is metallic nanobots. And these metallic nanobots attach the nervous system and can give messages. It's little microchips that can give messages to the nervous system for the nervous system to do certain things. We don't know how far advanced that is. Maybe it could have been developed a long time ago and we have never been told, and these people are cyborgs like that. I don't know. It's a wild theory, but you never know.
Yeah. Have you you have been doing this for a long time? Have you ever encountered Men in Black or something that
No.
might be that?
No,
Nothing.
I never have.
And let's hope not.
Yeah, I like to stay. But if I ever see one coming, I would confront him. In fact, I will give him a bad day if I could. I really, I want to find out what they are. But then I don't think I'll ever get to
Yeah.
see one. So
I'm not sure I would dare to.
you froze up there.
Yeah, you froze up a little bit too, but now I think you're back. So
I saw there was a little cloud that came over the camera of you. Could you see that?
I saw it too, actually. That's very strange. I don't know what it is. it's kind of scary. It shows up when we're
Yeah, and
talking about Men in Black now.
that was on your camera, not on my side, but on your
Yeah.
camera. So you may have somebody there with you.
Yeah, maybe. Or I hope not, but I saw it clearly. So I guess the viewers must see it also. So
Well, at least we got one listener.
yeah.
You mentioned also something in the book about time rifts.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is I'd say it's an amazing story. It happened to a friend of mine some years ago. He and his son were out driving. I think it was December 21st, which I think is winter solstice also. Yeah. And they're going home. They live on an island. It's a very, very flat island. There's no hills on it. There's no up and down or anything like that. And there's hardly any forest. So they're going home and suddenly they realize that there is no lights anymore. I mean, if they see a house, there's no lights in it. There's no lamps on. All the signs on the roads are gone. This guy is a dear friend of mine. He's a bus driver, so he drives these roads every day. And they continue to drive and they never arrive to their home. They're kind of stuck in these endless roads on this island. Suddenly they realize, and both feel it, that it's going downhill, and there is no hills. I promise you, there is no hills on this road. And it feels like it's going downhill for a couple of kilometers. Then they arrive to, it's still, there's also, to add to the weirdness, it's also a green fog all over the place. And he have to stop. You have to stop because this is too weird. Where are they? He goes out and he can smell he can smell pine forest. They don't have pine forest on this island. He can smell it. He can see it. And they come to a crossing which he kind of recognizes. It's very, very similar to a crossing he's been at before, but the houses are differently. And there's a house it's like a greenhouse, you can say, with white glass window panes. And they stop there. And he feel, okay, I need to turn around. I should turn around because this is getting dangerous. They lost, in this green fog. Suddenly you have this strong feeling that something is following them, something dangerous, something aggressive. He jokingly called it a monster, but he doesn't know what it was. Something was following them. So they went into the car again and started to drive and drive and drive. And suddenly they can see the lights from their hometown or village up front, and they managed to go through this area. And for him, this is because he's such an experienced driver, he knows every road on this island. He went to locations where it just doesn't exist there. He sensed smells which you don't have on this island. So for him, he felt it was like he was going through some kind of time rift, or even some kind of into another dimension or something. These are two witnesses also, both him and his son. So I was writing about this. I did a in-depth interview with him, which is in the book. When my uncle emailed me a couple of months ago, and he lives on the same island, and he said, Fred, I experienced something odd last summer. And it turned out he also got lost on the same stretch of road, or at least the same part of the island, where they just kept driving and driving and driving. And my uncle is a quite famous ornithologist, bird watcher, basically. He also knows this island, like the back of his hand. And they ended up, a few kilometers totally the wrong way. The odd thing with this road he went on is that it's a straight road. There's no curves. It's just a straight road going directly over the island, and they still managed to get lost on it. That's, it both had the sense of, I don't know if you're aware of the Oz factor. Jen Randall's used that expression in the 80s, where reality around you seemed to change. You can sense and feel the reality.
But it seemed to me like there was more to it than just a time rift. Because if there's no hills on the island and he found himself going downhill, he was not on the island. So, or he was in a far distant past when there may have been something of a hill on the island. But then again, the road would have been gone. So we have to analyze it from the outside in here. And I think that he may have been in a different place.
Yeah, because it had similarities. The road was there, but it never, it never ended. Basically, there were no, you couldn't get off the road. Basically, he's still very, very. I mean, his son refuses to talk about it because it was such a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
And he also discovered that when he came home and he started to talk with his wife at the time, she didn't want to talk about it either, and his son doesn't want to talk about it either. It's like no one wants to touch this experience. So I'm very happy he told it to me, to share it, and especially since my uncle also were at the same part of the island, experience not as a spectacular thing, but still connected, I feel. But I don't know if the winter solstice can have something to do with it, because as you know, in many cultures around the world, the winter solstice is a time of the year when can be a breach in the different realms and dimensions and such.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the one we can stamp with the word mystery, because I have no clue, but there are indications that he was in a different reality. a different reality may have had a little bit of a hill on the island, because there are different timelines parallel to each other, and there are minor differences and sometimes major differences in the different timelines. If he was in a different timeline where there was a hill on the island, he could perfectly have that. And maybe other differences was that the houses on the side of the road were not there in that timeline. So,
Yeah, it is a mystery. I need to mention shortly that some years ago we wanted to go out and eat. So we left our home, and there was this odd fog, once again a fog around the building and the road. This is not spectacular at all. It won't end in anything amazing, but we felt that everyone in the restaurant was different. There was something off with the behavior of everyone in there, how they talk, how they looked, how they behaved. It was I can explain it. It had a dream-like quality, and it was so disturbing that we ate very, very fast, and we left the restaurant. And just when I was about to close the door behind me, there was a man. There was a chubby family. The only other guest was a chubby family, kind of cartoonish, and the husband there, he called out to me and say, "Do you think this is a fast eating competition?"
fast
I
what?
know, a fast eating competition, because he thought we were eating too fast, because we felt it was quite disturbing in there.
Yeah.
And that was just it. I know it's not scary or anything like that, but there's an absurdity in it, and it's so hard to describe, Age, but everything seemed so different. I don't know what that is, or maybe it was just I don't know, but it's fascinating stuff for me, at least.
Well, there is more between heaven and earth than what we can explain, so it could have been just about anything.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I want to ask you also, I see we got about 7 minutes left. What about giants? Have you heard anything about those in Sweden?
Yeah, I have. If you're gonna look at modern observations, they're not so common. But I had contact with a woman who claimed to have seen 3 giants, or you could call them trolls. Also, they can be quite big here. Also, some years ago on a road, 3 big lurking figures walking. There's also stories about the north of Sweden, what's called Lapland, and Kebnekaise is a mountain where at least during the 50s and 60s, people saw these very, very large figures walking. Some would like to call them Bigfoot, because something large at least. But I've been thinking about this, and it feels like it's more common with little people because they can easily hide. the giants, whoever they are or what they might be, maybe have a hard time hiding nowadays. Maybe that's why not people see them so often. But I love the giant mythology we have here in Scandinavia. Absolutely, I do.
Yeah, and Bigfoot is on every continent on Earth. I don't know about Antarctica, but on the others. I hear there is a gentleman here in the United States that was investigating things over in the area of Nevada, and they came into a cave where they found something like 15 mummified bodies laying there, and they were about 12 foot long, each one of them.
Oh.
And of course, that was all covered up. You know, the Smithsonian Institute, they cover this up because they come and take it. And in fact, the Smithsonian Institute was sued because there was evidence that they got these tall people and they disappeared. Somebody took them to the Supreme Court of the United States, and the Supreme Court ruled that the Smithsonian Institute had to release all information on giants. So if you write to the Smithsonian Institute, they will send you a file with pictures and stuff, but they don't publish it. You just got to get your own, and because now they have to release it. So there is evidence that they exist. Absolutely. And I'm sure it's the same in Sweden, because even back in Norway, we have stories, especially in the northern part, in the mountains, of really tall people.
Yeah, they seem to, I mean, most of the stories about giants in Sweden is from the north of Sweden, where absolutely it's most common to hear about things like this. We've had a couple of episodes of possible Bigfoot sightings further down in Sweden. There's an American woman who you should have on here sometime, called Susie, who lives in Sweden, and she had a couple of very, very intriguing encounters with what's, you know, Sasquatch or Bigfoot or what you want to call them. So yeah, there is something out there in the forests. Absolutely.
Yeah, when we're back in nature. And some of them appears to be interdimensional, because there are people that they say they have seen them walking away and suddenly disappearing. Where did they go? They may have gone back to their reality that's next to ours.
There's an amazing account told, I think his name is Adam Davis and John Carlson. They were about to go out looking for Bigfoot some years ago. And they had a very, very traumatic experience where they basically encounter a portal. If you can, you know, they went to an area where Bigfoots are common. And the owner said, you know, yeah, we see Bigfoots every night, etc., etc. So they were out looking. It was dark. Suddenly, something opens up out in nature, and some creatures, some hairy creatures. Oddly enough, they wouldn't describe them as Bigfoot. More like short creatures, hairy creatures, quite aggressive, coming out from this portal thing and attacking them. And this happened twice, 2 nights in a row. So yeah, there is something with this portal thing, how they can, you know, I mean, how they can disappear, how they can phase in and out of our reality. You know, if you know, some people call them animals, but I think I'm more into the, you know, some kind of dimensional stuff there.
Yeah, absolutely. I see we are down to the end of the show here. Let people know where they can find your book and where they can get in touch with you for more stories.
Absolutely. You can find Northern Lights, High Strangeness in Sweden on Amazon. Just search for it there. You can also connect with me on Twitter and Instagram. I have the colorful name Homo Satanis. But I post a lot about weirdness and high strangeness and the paranormal and books. And I'm always, I love new friends all over the world. So join me there, you know.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, I will hear now. We are, we're down to the end. So just stay in touch, and I would say there's a war out there. You control your mind, because if you don't, someone else is controlling it for you, and that's not for your purpose. They are doing it for their purpose. And then look outside of the box. That's where all the good stuff is. And read books like this one, Northern Lights, High Strangeness in Sweden. You will find it, and you will see a lot more than what we talked about. So anyway, we will see you next week. In the words of Spock, live long and prosper.